Liked by The Sound of Violence.
This comes from The Sound of Violence, a podcast about MMA podcasts. That is getting so meta, right? I'm blown away by this. But he asks, what are some of your favorite podcasts? Also, what Brazilian booze or drinking customs are us Americans sleeping on? I like the segue there. Like very, very natural transition there from podcast to Brazilian booze. But let's start with my area of expertise, which is, of course, booze.
About it all.
What up, everybody, and welcome back to yet another Sound of Violence podcast. We are an MMA podcast to let you know the MMA podcasts you should catch, skip, and can't miss each week, as well as we try and check out a new show. I am Pulver, fucking keeping this stream together with glue and rubber bands, and I'm here with my co-host Chris Madaffer, who's in a weirdly cropped frame, but it'll eventually fix itself. What up, dude?
Just realized forgot to close my window, so I'll fix that later. But yeah, I want to break my piece of shit laptop in half. So
that's
yeah.
Right. You're having about as much luck with your laptop as I'm having with OBS today. So it's really
yeah, we were
going,
supposed to start.
Great.
We were supposed to start about an hour ago, so we'll see where this goes.
Yeah, should be an interesting one for sure. But I'm glad to be back at it. It is fucking sober October, unfortunately, so I'm not even drinking this month, or I'm definitely not drinking this month. I haven't even smoked weed for the last 4 days, which is out of my character. But I am drinking some coffee. I got, I don't know what kind of, I think like just a Starbucks house blend or something.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have any coffee right here, but I think I'd like Don Francisco, whatever's cheap.
Right.
On sale, right?
So do you have any Papa Vodka Presents, Doug Stanhope Presents our sponsors this week, since you're not doing Sober October?
Nope. This week is just brought to you by good old cannabis and water.
Hey, that's not a bad combo.
Yeah. So
that's what's up. Well, we will go ahead and jump into format then, since it's been a weird week. I feel like there wasn't as many MMA podcasts as I would have expected for a giant card like Izzy versus Whitaker. I feel like there would have been a lot more than there was.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I don't have that many notes at all because I mean, like we've said before in the past, I look at shows I'm kind of thinking about listening to, and I'm just like, nah. So maybe I'm just kind of more, I don't know, I guess jaded. I don't know, maybe, but yeah, this week was just kind of weird in general.
It definitely was.
This fight is, I mean, I'm pretty sure it's being promoted pretty well. But yeah, it's a huge fight. I don't know why people, I feel like, didn't give a shit.
Yeah, it's definitely a bit of a weird one. I feel like because the card's so top-heavy might be part of it.
Yeah.
It's also just the time of year where I feel like a lot of places take just time off. Ariel didn't even do a fucking show this week. Well, kind of didn't do a show this week. So that's always like he's the litmus test as to what people are thinking about fight week, I feel like. So it'll be interesting to see as we go through these. But why don't you go ahead and start us off with the MMA podcasts you recommend people... Oh, I should mention, before we even start that, I should mention this more often at the top of the show, but in any of the audio versions you're listening to of the show, or on the website, sovpod.com or thesoundofviolence.com, we have links to every one of the shows we talk about. So if you guys are looking for a show that we specifically mention, you can always go there and we'll have that info. So, Chris, why don't you start us off into format and let people know what your MMA podcasts you recommend they catch this week is?
I'll start off with Believe You Me. I think it was the episode they had on Monday. Let's see.
I'm trying to remember the name of it. I heard it. I just can't remember the name of it.
But they start off talking about some sort of legal dispute that's going on between John Jones and Michael John against Frankie Lester, who was like a former coach.
Yeah, Frank the Tank.
Yeah. So I talked about that, and I know other podcasts discussed that briefly as well. Something over money, like many disputes are.
Yep.
Um, let's see. Jared Cannonier, great interview with him. He was on the phone. He talks about his career trajectory up to this point and how at one point he was 300 pounds and working in an airport. They asked him kind of what got him into martial arts. He said he was in the army when he was younger, and that's what got him into martial arts, probably because of him seeing actual combat.
Right.
He said he kind of wanted to also know martial, but he said growing up too, he was kind of, whether it was watching some sort of Saturday morning cartoons, anything with martial arts stuff with his brothers, he was kind of always had that interest in the back of his mind. He said he started doing judo in Alaska, which is interesting. He said before he met his wife and got married, he was in great shape. Then it was just dad life, and he was on the couch getting fat and eating wrong food.
Checks out.
Then he became 300 pounds and was super over. I mean, he was like super overweight, he said, but he was just a fat dude out of shape. I said his wife loves. He says his wife cooks for him. Oh yeah, the thing I liked that I thought was very interesting is based on just his current mindset and how he prepares for his fights. He's into like earth stones and minerals. And
Yeah, he's a crystal.
That
He's one of those crystal dudes.
Yeah, that you could absorb energy from the earth for healing properties and kind of personality things. My brother is kind of into that actually, and has like some, I don't know really shit about like the minerals and stuff like that, but
yeah, it's fun when you look into it. It's real fun.
Yeah,
there's some fun. There's some fun hoops you have to jump through to be into that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, never mind. I won't.
Let's just say all the craziest ladies I know love them some crystals, and I don't just mean the methamphetamine kind. So
yeah. Jared, they asked him who he thinks going to win the main event. He says he thinks Adesanya is going to win, if he keeps it standing though, and if he could defend Whitaker's takedowns, because he thinks that's what's it's gonna go down to. And he says Robert wins. Basically, if he mixes in takedowns, Robert wins. If not, he could keep distance standing, he'll win. Solid interview overall. Michael retracts statements he made about Colby. He said because he was able to land a title fight against Marty. Lewis says I'm all on the Colby train. He said not as a personality, he says because he thinks he's crazy, but a wrestling heel. But he thinks Colby is going to beat Marty. So yeah, it was a solid episode overall.
Nice. Yeah, I think that was episode 165.
Yeah, I think so.
Stoned to death, I believe is the
that's right. What did they say?
I think it was because of all the stones he was talking about.
Yeah, and then they basically Lewis made the idea of someone, I can't remember what it is, but basically someone should get stoned to death. I was like, yeah, I would love to. Oh, they were talking about Harrington. They want to stone him to death.
And Harrington said he'd love to get stoned to death.
Yes, they said Harrington loves getting stoned, you know, and they're like, oh, wait, let's actually stone him, though. How fun would that be?
Yeah. So. No, I'd watch that. Hashtag would watch.
Yeah.
Cool, man. Yeah, that was a solid episode. Let's see. I guess we'll keep on moving on. I had a catch this week. Fights Gone By, episode 169. Really solid one overall. He talks a little bit about Cannonier's win over Hermanson. I know he's the son of Herman. I don't know how to pronounce it correctly.
I'm pretty sure it's Hermanson.
I think it's Herman's son because he's the son. That's the way the names work over there. Because he's the son of.
Well, I mean, Herman. If you're English, yeah. He's Scandinavian, so I'm pretty sure it's gonna be Hermanson.
Right, but the way their last names work is his dad's name is Herman, which is why his last name is Hermanson.
No, I'm not disputing that.
No,
I'm just saying, like, based on how they would pronounce it, besides, like, someone who's English, like Johnson or Williamson. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Where's John Anik when you need him? I think you're right on that. I always have a panic attack about it. So, let's see. Jack also talks a bit about Felder's rough commentary, and evidently he tweeted something about Felder. Didn't tag him or anything, but Felder ended up in the comments talking shit, which is always funny. Especially when Slack just gets to be all super sarcastic and salty back.
Oh, that's right. I remember on Reddit he posted something, and then some say, "Hey, what's with you and your beef with Paul Felder?"
Yeah.
Kind of briefly touched on it.
pretty funny back and forth. He also had a great meme that he tweeted out this week about Valentina Shevchenko, which is real solid. Highly recommend checking that out. He also talks about how MVP should have never been sanctioned to fight Richard Kiley, about how that's just a fucking joke of a fight and never should have been allowed to happen. And it's interesting that John Kavanaugh is also part of the sanctioning body that allowed the fight, and of course,
by the way,
is a SPG guy.
That reminds me, and I'm not going to talk about the whole Dan Mergliotta thing because I think it's fucking stupid. But what I will say is, someone called they refer to MVP as Canderson Silva. I thought that's pretty great.
I'd not heard that before, but yeah, that's a lot of fun. I like that one quite a bit. Canderson Silva. I've not heard that. That's really funny. Let's see. Some other stuff. A lot of this episode focused on an ADCC recap from last weekend, which was cool. He talks a lot about Lachlan Giles and his run through the ADCC Absolute Division, outside of the Gordon Ryan match, obviously. And he also talks a bit about the no-gi revolution when it comes to competitions and how a lot of no-gi guys are starting to do much better in all competitions. Gordon Ryan being the primary example. And that dude's just taking on fucking everybody every chance he gets. And Gordon Ryan, if you guys have not been keeping up on ADCC, number one, I don't blame you because Flow Combat's paywall is fucking brutal. But number two, who's $30 Flow Combat? Really?
Jesus.
A month. And they've been hiding their single month option, so their only easily findable option is a year, which is not cheap. But Gordon Ryan's run was fucking insane in that thing, winning both his division and the Absolute division, and it was super dope. So definitely worth catching some highlights of that if you haven't. And then he talks a bit about Adesanya versus Whitaker and how a lot of fans are having trouble grasping Whitaker's game because he's just really well-rounded. There's not like one thing that stands out as his kind of main skill set. And so a lot of people are like, I don't get what Robert Whitaker does well. So he talks a bit about that. He did also mention Adesanya as a super underrated guillotine, which I thought was interesting. He talked a little bit about Bellator 229 and the spinny shit main event between Koreshkov and Lorenz Larkin, which is actually about 30 minutes from here up in Pechanga.
Yeah, see, I made the mistake of missing out, which was apparently an amazing boxing match between Errol Spence Jr. and Sean Porter.
It's supposed to be insane. I still haven't caught it yet. I'm planning on going back and doing that, but it's supposed to be it's supposed to be the best fight of the year, hands down.
Yeah, I think it went to split decision.
I know it was really close. It basically came down to the last two rounds.
Yeah, so it's like, oh wait, you have actual good, relevant judging this time? What a fucking shocker.
Well, and also, like, just because they came to the right end amount doesn't mean necessarily that they judge things correctly, too.
Oh, I know.
So.
The shouts out to fucking Fury versus Wilder.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Shouts out to most judging in combat sports in general, so.
I'll just say this real quickly. The whole, how would I say, status quo of how judging is perceived in boxing, I think is really, and I'm not going to call it casuals, but say, for example, if you're the one who says, oh, Wilder won that fight, or at worst it's a draw because he had 2 knockdowns, I think what it is it's MMA judging kind of permeating and lingering in the short-term memory of boxing fans now, and I will die on that hill.
Interesting. I hadn't thought about that.
You know what? I'm probably going to write about that. Fuck it. Because I've written in a while. So, yeah. No, I guarantee you that's what it is. I know someone who boxes, and they just tell me all the time, Wilder won. I'm like, dude, you're going to give me a fucking stroke if you keep saying that. Like, you have to go by the 10-point must-scoring system. Right. If you have the short-term memory of, oh, it's a knockdown in MMA, and then he goes, oh, wait, even a knockdown in an MMA round doesn't win you a fight. I'm like, yes, it does, because same with the takedown. It's like, dude, I just don't like arguing with people, especially when people, their actual boxing and train. It's just like, dude, I don't even fucking train boxing, and I don't even want to argue with you. It's just like, come on. It's a scoring system we're talking about here. This isn't a fucking street fight. You know?
It's a bad scoring system. It's a big part of the
problem. Not. That means it's not good.
Yeah.
Clearly. But it's just like, it's just so frustrating. I just don't want to. Yeah.
Understandably.
It just needs to change, I guess. Like, what would it be? Open scoring system? Would that be like the new thing someone would introduce?
Open scoring would help, at least. Like, it would at least make it more interesting, and it would be something different. I don't mind what Glory does too when they're overseas. Glory every once in a while will do they'll do 5 judges instead of 3. And you seem to have a little bit less fucked up decisions. You still get some fucked up decisions, but it seems to be a little bit better. Because the odds that 3 people fucked it up is less, slightly. So, I don't know. It's interesting nonetheless, for sure. But yeah, Fights Gone By, episode 169, very solid. Did you have any other MMA podcasts to catch this week? Or do you just have like some also rans for later?
I mean, just the amount of stuff I have on here, I'm probably just going to mention all of them. I mean, yeah, so. Cool. But no other catches, I guess, technically. It's mostly just mentions.
Cool. Well, I actually did have another one, which is, there's like all kinds of caveats for this thing. It's Ariel Helwani's MMA show. However, it's not his Monday MMA show because he didn't do one this week. He has now changed the name of the MMA reporters to Ariel Helwani's MMA show, the same name as his other show. Which
isn't it just like so 2 of his shows have the same name?
How yes, and they're on different days and they have different formats.
Okay.
Yeah, that seems like an ESPN change to me. But the other reason he cited for changing it is because he doesn't want to just have MMA reporters on. Which I think the reason he changed it, he mentioned, and also I'm going to have a completely different kind of guest next week. I think he's going to have a bunch of pro wrestling shit on that show here going
no,
forward.
like once I just literally hear you say he doesn't want other MMA reporters, aka I don't want any other people with credible, counter arguments against my own narrative is what that is. And also they're paying me more money to do other shit, so fuck it.
Right.
That's all that means.
And I think it's also...
Or it also means, hey, it's boring as fuck when it's just you and other MMA journalists just talking about fighting. Let's have some more flash and shit on here, and it's just like...
Yeah,
okay.
It's a little bit of all that, I think. I think also at a certain point it just was becoming Brett Okamoto and Mark Raimondi every week. Like every week. Sean Sheehan, of course, came on one of them recently. Actually, Sean Sheehan was on the last ever MMA Reporters. So shouts out to Shawnee Podcasts for that. But I believe actually Ariel already, since that show came out on Wednesday on the 3rd of October, I believe he has already done a podcast with a pro wrestler. Which fucking... Yeah, okay. Oh, speaking of which, Mark Raimondi called in on this episode, and it was just a bunch of talk about AEW. Because of course it was, so...
I don't even know what the fuck that is, so... Cool.
Good on you. I clearly listened to the wrong fucking podcast, because I have to hear about the new Wednesday night... I think it's Wednesday Night Wars, or is it Thursday? AEW going head-to-head against SmackDown, or 205 Live, or whatever fucking garbage WWE program happens that day. I don't know.
Yeah, that just falls on deaf ears for me, man, so...
Yeah, unless someone's singing "Heaven Needed a Champion" and Fritz von Erich is in the audience, Fritz von Erich. God, I always fuck that dude's name up. I don't care about modern wrestling at all. I don't even care about old wrestling, but it's much more funny. All of that this was leading up to be a skip, and then Ariel had Ramona Shelburne on, who is, of course, you would probably know her. She's the ESPN reporter. Actually, you probably know her from Real Sports. Not the show Real Sports, but from actual sports. She does a lot of NBA coverage and stuff like that. But she's also known as the one outlet Ronda Rousey would talk to for the longest time.
Oh, great.
She was the only person. Remember the Ronda interviews after the Holly fight? The only one that was allowed to do interviews with Ronda was Ramona Shelburne.
So, this lady kind of looks familiar.
Yeah, you would, if you heard her talk more, you would probably recognize her. She does a lot of mainstream sports stuff, but the conversation he had with her was actually really interesting. They talk a lot about because of course this weekend's event is at the Marvel Stadium in Melbourne, Australia, and it's the same stadium that Ronda Rousey and Holly Holm fought in. It's just been renamed since then. So it's interesting hearing her she walks through the whole process of finding out about Ronda by going to the Zingano fight in LA. And then she talks about covering Ronda in the lead up to the Holly fight and just kind of how the whole she just walks through like step by step the lead up of the Holly fight and the fallout of the Holly fight. She talks about being on the flight with Ronda on the way back afterwards. A lot of really interesting stuff that I haven't ever heard really. I've heard him mention parts of it briefly, but never just like a step by step breakdown of that whole process. So I thought that was really interesting and definitely worth checking out just because I feel like we got a weird narrative since the MMA journalists weren't in the MMA community in general really had no access to Ronda after the Holly fight, and especially around the Amanda one. A lot of that story just kind of got lost, and a lot of the journalists were so angry about all of it and her just cutting off all communication that it just kind of it all kind of just got buried and just kind of got glossed over as this like anti-Ronda's kind of a Ronda's abandoned the people kind of thing. Whereas hearing Ramona Shelburne talk about it, it's interesting hearing that insight and hearing kind of what Ronda was saying to her at the time and kind of her thought process about all of it. So just an interesting interview for sure, and definitely worth the time to listen to it. And then at the end, New York Rick called in to talk about being in Australia for UFC 243. So really, a lot of that episode is skippable outside of the Ramona Shelburne interview, but I did find that super interesting, and it's definitely worth the time to listen to.
Nice. Let's see.
Cool, man. Let's see. So, did you have a skip for this week?
I don't know. A-side live chat was whatever.
Yeah. I guess I should give the disclaimer, which I always forget to do. Just because we say to skip your show doesn't mean we hate your show or we hate you, especially like Jose Young's, Guillermo Cruz.
No, those guys are
Danny
great.
Segura. All you guys are great. It was Danny on this week, right? Not Guillermo?
I think it was Danny, yeah.
I know one of them was on last week and one of them was on this week, and I'm mixing it up. But yeah, I mean, it was an okay episode. It was just they talked about a lot of the same stuff everybody did. Cool. Let's see. So I did have a skip actually, and this is again a show that I actually really like. I actually really like both hosts a whole lot. But the reason why it was a skip for me is because the WoCast, episode 133, Mike from the WoCast has a thing that he likes to do, and it drives me fucking nuts. This week, he had on... my notes say Arabian Edwards, but I know it's actually Fabian Edwards.
That's pretty great.
Yeah, Fabian Edwards. He had Fabian Edwards on, but he had him on at the exact same time as Mike Shipman, his upcoming opponent, who he has beef with. And he does
great.
that terrible aerial thing where he
great.
asks a question and they both yell over each other and it's inaudible. It's just such a clusterfuck. They just repeat the same thing over the top of each other, louder and louder, but neither of which are actually listening to each other. Mike tries desperately to get them to answer a question, and then they just keep repeating, "Oh, bruv, your brother got hit. You didn't do shit." It's like shit like that over and over and over again. It's just not. It's not. It's bad radio. It's bad interview. It doesn't do anything for anybody unless you really like just drama for drama's sake and with no real reason or story or interesting like assets to it, or aspects rather. So I don't know. They very briefly previewed 243 also, which that's fine. I hate when they do this segment. I hate when Ariel does this segment. It's why I don't really catch many press conferences, because they're very boring and they don't really do anything for me. I don't know. I don't care to hear people yell over the top of each other.
Yeah, it's stupid.
Yeah.
It just doesn't do anything.
If I wanted to hear people yell over the top of each other, I'd listen to Rogan's Fight Companions more consistently.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So yeah, that's my skip for this week. I do really like the WoCast though, and I really like their episodes where they don't do that. But yeah, this one's a skip for me just because there's like 40 minutes, or at least it felt like 40 minutes of just two dudes yelling over the top of each other and not actually saying anything. So. Cool, man. Well, let's see. Do you have a can't miss episode for this week?
Co-main was solid. I'll just say I don't have a can't miss, just more like, I guess, catches or mentions. Co-main was good. Oh yeah, it was like 30 minutes or like 35 minutes. That's because Ben is he's in Melbourne right now.
Yeah, I believe they said they called it the what did they call it? Special report.
Yeah, he says city cops over here wear black mesh Crocodile Dundee hats, which is awesome.
That is pretty sweet.
They said Gegard Mousasi told the athletic commission they should test Rafael Lovato Jr. more often because of recent changes in his body. You think you can milk his nipples? That sounds like something Mousasi would say. They talk about renaming the Von Flu choke to Von Prue.
Everybody talked about this shit this week.
Yeah, Miragliata talk. I don't give a fuck about that. I don't want to share an opinion. I just don't care. It's fucking overblown and stupid.
Yeah,
gives a shit.
I talked about it a little bit last week, but like, are we just gonna start calling?
Guess what my interpretation is? Both guys are fucking idiots. MVP, you're a moron. Dan Miragliata, you're a fucking moron too. There you go. Case settled. Boom.
Yeah, they both handled it terribly. Like maybe
don't tell
the ref to fuck off. Hey ref, don't call the fighter a shithead or whatever or piece of shit.
Piece of shit.
Yeah, just bad look all around. Much like most of that entire fucking event. So, I mean, really, that fight never should have happened. So, really, Dan Miragliata.
I didn't watch it based on I didn't even know who the fuck his opponent was, and that's why we call him Canderson Silva for fucking reasons. So, yeah,
it's pretty good. It's pretty good. I really like Canderson Silva a lot.
I do too. That's hilarious. You know, I kind of want to tweet that at him, but you know what? Guess what? I don't ever think about MVP anyway, so it's a waste of time.
Plus, never tag fighters. Nothing good comes of it.
I know. Unless they take the bait, then it could be entertaining. But other than that, I'm not that kind of person anyway, so I don't care.
True.
Yeah.
Never mind. I'm not gonna make that joke. I was gonna go real dark real quick. Let's see. So I actually had 2 can't miss episodes for this week. I'm curious if you heard it. First off, MMA Roadshow episode.
Hold on, I'm gonna close my window real quick because I don't want my fucking stupid neighbor opening and closing his car.
Go for it. So MMA Roadshow episode 236. This was John Morgan and Cold Coffee. They're recording in a pub in Australia, which is a lot of fun. Because in the background, you just hear hella noise from the Australian pub. You can also, on that MMA Roadshow episode, hear John get progressively more faded as it goes on. Dude definitely had a good buzz going. So that was pretty great. Did you catch MMA Roadshow this week? It just came out this morning, I think.
The John Morgan one? No, unfortunately I didn't catch it.
One thing to keep an eye on, I'm not sure if everybody else is having this problem or if it's just me, but I think they adjusted their RSS feed, which if you're a podcast, never do anything to your RSS feed because John Morgan's, at least the RSS feed of that show I was subscribed to, stopped updating, and I had to unsubscribe and resubscribe to the new RSS feed to get the new episodes. So if you guys have not seen an episode from John Morgan since the Mexico City recap, I think it's 234.5, then you may want to unsubscribe and resubscribe through whatever player or whatever you use, because I had that issue, and I was bummed out. I was like, holy shit, did the Roadshow miss their first episode for the first time and since the beginning? Nope. No, I just didn't catch that there was a new feed, so something to keep an eye on. But there was some cool stuff in this episode. He played an interview with Izzy, and then Ben Folks joined them in the bar, which was real good. John's pretty buzzed, and he starts giving Ben a bunch of shit about leaving MMA Junkie, which is hilarious. It's like, Ben Folks, too good for MMA Junkie, leaving to go behind a paywall.
That's great.
It's real solid. They talk a lot about the local media, focusing a bit more on Adesanya, and I believe it was Ben Folks that said Adesanya has fighter pilot-like confidence, which I thought was a great observation. Like, that's such a specific reference, but it is so accurate. So I just thought that was cool as hell. Oscar Willis also joined in the pub to talk about the main card, and Cold Coffee keeps doing a terrible Australian accent. It's not as bad as Connor Rebush's, the LA. But it was pretty goddamn bad. Let's see. There's an interview with Justin Tafa, who's fighting on this card. They talk a bit about their Patreon. There's an interview with Jorgen De Castro, who's fighting Tafa. And then the Submission Radio guys actually join them as well. And they talk about...
nice.
Yeah, they talk about how the Australian fans are kind of bummed because... And I've heard this from a bunch of places. I know Sean Sheehan is one of the people who's talked about this in the past, where a lot of times especially the UFC, will go to a city and they'll just fill it with people from that area, a lot of them being regional fighters. And every time that country or that city is like, we've seen these dudes a lot, we kind of want to see people with big names. I've seen this dude fight on Cage Warriors or on Aspera FC 14 times, or on what's the Australian one, Hex, or Eternal, I think is another one. Anyway, it's a lot of guys who've been fighting regionally and that a lot of these fans have already seen a bunch of times. So to stack them with a bunch of people who just happen to be locals is not real satisfying for fans. I get why they do it. It's because a lot of those fighters will sell tickets, like just personally, of people they know. But yeah, it's a bummer, and it's cool to hear Casper and Dennis kind of talk about that in depth. They also talk about Jake Matthews and Megan Anderson and kind of how their careers have gone a little bit different than originally expected, and what the fights this weekend could do for them. So I just thought it was good overall, and fun episode. As someone who's not drinking, maybe I just enjoyed hearing people in a pub. Maybe that's why I liked it so much, but good one for sure.
Nice.
Yeah, and then I did have another can't miss this week, and so I did the fun joke around local fight happening this weekend kind of episode, and my other one is the exact opposite. It's Show Money episode 30. This is the show hosted by Jason Cruz, John Nash, and Paul Gift, and they talk a lot about the big Endeavor IPO and it getting pulled. They open actually talking about how Jason is taking over MMA Payout, since they're no longer affiliated with Axis, I believe. The people who owned Access TV and all that, since they basically cut off all MMA ties, Jason's now taking over as the head of that site, so that should be cool. And then they talk a lot about, the Endeavor pulling the IPO, and there being a lot of reasons behind it. They mentioned that, so essentially when you're about to have an IPO, you do a road show where you go out and you basically pitch to investors. And if your IPO is doing well, by the end of that road show, you should have sold more shares than you had. Essentially, like you should essentially have sold everything you had and be ramping up costs as you progress through the roadshow because you have less and less available. Evidently, it was the opposite of that with the Endeavor IPO, and it was to the point where Paul Gift, someone actually called him and asked him questions about the legitimacy of Endeavor and their ties to the UFC and whether it's at all going to make money and if there's problems with it. Which normally those are not questions that you hear after a roadshow. Those are normally questions that get scouted ahead of time. So it's interesting to hear kind of their take on that. They also have mentioned, which I believe, who was it? Oh, you know what? It was the co-main event mailbag this week. A guy wrote in talking about it. But IPOs in general have done terrible. I want to say it was Uber recently that their IPO tanked. I know there was another company that their IPO just tanked. There could be a couple reasons why Endeavor didn't actually pursue that and go public, but it'll be interesting to see kind of how that progresses going forward. And then they talk a little bit about Joe Silva's testimony and whether or not it's going to be included, because I know Zuffa is appealing it currently, I believe. So it's interesting talk about all that stuff. It's all very in the weeds, so if you've not been keeping up with it, they do their best to kind of break it down into layman's terms, but a lot of it is way above my head because I am by no means any kind of financial expert. One might consider me the opposite of a financial expert.
Same with me.
I mean, I'm great if you want. I'm great at financing budget booze, but outside of that and maybe some weed, really, I'm not your guy.
I am like the champion of like budget ramen, not the shitty like one that's really bad for you, but like budget organic ramen. It's actually out there. Check out your local farmer's market.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Or worst case, you ask the right people at enough Ranch 99.
I'll say this though, instead of like getting like the single packs of like Marukan or whatever the fuck it's called, or Nissan, right, for like 50 cents a pack or 49 cents, that's the fake shit. The real organic stuff's 99 cents. So you gotta come on. You have to sacrifice 50 cents more to get real.
Yeah. No, the struggle for real ramen is really real.
Either you're eating plastic ramen, or you're eating kind of real ramen, right?
Right.
So there you go.
Checks out for sure. And then they at the end they talk a little bit about Singer's progression model, which I'm not going to get into because I barely understand it, but it's interesting, and it's the kind of show that they are talking about stuff that is going to drastically influence the future of the UFC and possibly MMA in general, depending on how some of these hearings go. So, if you guys are not subscribed to Show Money, which is part of the Bloody Elbow Presents network, you absolutely should be doing that, or at least catch up on some of them. I highly recommend all their hearings that they went to during the Vegas hearings for the antitrust suit. All that stuff is really interesting, and it could, like I said, down the line, it could drastically influence the way we see the sport evolve. So.
Yeah.
Cool, man. So yeah, those were my can't misses. Did you happen to catch any new shows this week?
Unfortunately not. I couldn't really even find any new shows. Well, not that I really tried to look, to be honest. If I'm honest.
I need to share you on my list, because I have a list of like 50 that I still haven't even gotten to. I actually caught a couple. So I caught Zoe's podcast show, episode 178, ZO. This is actually a recommendation by Ashley, the MMA nerd. It's hosted by a guy named Zo. And he basically does a very brief recap of UFC Copenhagen and previews UFC 243. It's kind of pick focused. I liked it overall. The guy has an interesting voice. He has a cool cadence. He did at one point say heavyweight fights are always good, which I found hilarious. But overall, I liked it. It seems like a show that I would need to listen to more of them to really get a full grasp on, kind of, because pick shows are always kind of hard to just jump into one. Because a lot of
exactly.
Especially on a card like this where it's so top heavy that like a lot of the pick shows this week, even like MMA by the numbers, like it was a good episode, but since there's not a lot of stats on a lot of the guys, it's like this would not be the week to jump into it, kind of thing. So that's a show I'm going to check out again in the future, but I liked it for sure from what I saw. And then my other new show is the return of an old show. However, it was episode 1. It's the Luke Thomas live chat, episode 1. Shit's back.
Okay.
Like the old one that he used to do by himself.
Like the Wednesday, the one that was on Wednesday, right?
Yep. Yeah, the Wednesday.
Okay, yeah, I'm going to have to check that out again.
Malpractice, yeah. So he said, I forget that he said this, but when he brought it up, I remembered. He said at one point that if his YouTube channel hits 100,000 subscribers, he's going to start doing his live chat again regularly. And so it did. So,
I remember. Yeah, I saw that tweet. I think that it hit 100,000.
Yeah. So the live chat returns. It seems like it's going to be weekly, and I'm really excited about it because of the way he started out the show. He opened up saying he really wants this next chapter of his career to not be about dumb shit gossip. He's not interested in just getting clicks for click's sake. He's not interested in just getting numbers for numbers' sake. He's like, yeah, I did that. I had that whole drama with Chael, and we both did great numbers from it, but I'm not doing shit like that anymore because I have no interest in it. It doesn't do anything for me, and I don't have enough time left on the earth to do shit like that.
So does that mean he's going to abandon that really weird supposed to be about coffee show with Brendan Shaw that isn't about coffee or something?
I don't know what's happening with that. That was like a one-off. I have a feeling that'll be like, I bet we'll see that show again for either the Marty versus either the Usman versus Colby card or for the Nate versus Masvidal fight. I have a feeling like right around that time is when we'll see that show make a return, probably. But
yeah, I can see that for sure.
Yeah, but it was interesting to hear him say that. And then there was 2 questions right at the top of the show, and he said, I'm going to address these one time and one time only, and then we're not talking about shit like this ever again. And the first question was what actually went down at MMA fighting. And he talks about how he had some issues with the Vox Media higher-ups just failing to meet promises. He even mentioned that he put more money into his solo live chat than they have into the shows he was doing, which is fucking insane.
That's terrible, yeah.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. So, understandable that he just was kind of done with them, and especially with Vox, the way Vox has been going recently anyway, with just basically hiring a bunch of part-time writers because they can pay them less. It's real sketchy how all that has been playing out. And then Ariel and Luke, he addresses Ariel. Someone asked him, are you so cool with Ariel? Is there a beef there or anything? He's like, I don't have a beef with Ariel, but we're not friends. I don't think we're going to be friends. And he says that's basically all he's going to say. He's like, if I wanted to start a bunch of dumb drama and get a bunch of fucking attention and clicks, I could absolutely do that. There's some things that went down, but he says he doesn't give a fuck. He's not interested in stupid media beefs, and the channel's not going to be about that. And that's basically, he wrapped it on that. And that is, if you want to absolutely sell me on you doing quality journalism and interesting work, that is 100% the way to start a show. So I'm really excited to see what that dude does going forward. And then after that, he went on to talk mostly about just questions that people were throwing up. Stuff like TKZ versus Ortega, Kevin Lee versus Gregor. He says he wants to start doing some interviews with fighters over beers if he can figure out how to make it happen.
That'd be cool.
It'd be great. The logistics are really hard because obviously you can't really do that over Skype. And like a lot of times when he is around fighters, they're either in camp or leading into it or about to fight or just after a fight. So it's definitely going to be a thing where it seems like it'll be every once in a while kind of thing. But absolutely sign me up for Luke Thomas drinking beers with fighters. That is absolutely my kind of show.
Yo, real quick, I'm about to lose my fucking mind because my nose is running and I don't have any Kleenex because my allergies are fun, so I'll be right the fuck back. I apologize.
Go ahead, and I'll keep going through this. So, let's see. Some of the other things he brought up. He is going to start doing more technique breakdowns on his YouTube channel, which I think will be interesting. Here, let me mute Chris. So, let's see. Yeah, he's going to start doing more technique breakdowns, which I'm excited about. And he says the live chat's not necessarily just going to be about MMA. He's not necessarily opposed to talking about other things, but it's not, he's gonna use discretion when he does actually talk about that kind of stuff, so that could be interesting. He gives some book recommendations, stuff like that. They talk about the problems if Cormier beats Stipe and retires, where I think someone asked in comparison to if Cormier wins and bails, is that really any different than Dana not wanting GSP to win and then bail? So I thought that was kind of an interesting question and one that he went into detail about. He talks about how the MMA beat was always going to end, mostly because of the long commute he had. Because Luke Thomas had a pretty long commute for the MMA beat, so it was always kind of destined to end. Just because he said that commute was killing him. So that doesn't really surprise me, but I think he's talked kind of about that before. Let's see. He mentioned he is going to have Chuck Mindenhall in the Monday Morning Combat, or on Morning Combat on Monday, so that'll be interesting to see him fill in for dude who does that with him. Ian, I think is his name. Ian Park? Nope. Ian Parker's the guy from Anakin Florian. I forget dude's name. Anyway, dude from Morning Combat. Brian? I think his name's Brian. I think it's Brian. And then, yeah, I'm just really excited overall that chat is back, and he seems really excited about it. So, I think I liked Luke's live chat, which we've talked about on this show multiple times since he took over the MMA Hour and then left. I always liked his live chat way better. I thought it was way more interesting.
No, that was my favorite Luke Thomas show.
Yeah,
for sure as well.
Yeah, me too. So I'm excited to see that return, especially with the enthusiasm that he seems to have for it. I think it's going to be very fucking cool going forward. So highly recommend subscribing to his YouTube channel. I think it's just Luke Thomas.
I'm going to make sure I have a hot dog with some yellow mustard while listening to it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Drink some sweet IPAs, which he dunked on this week.
Oh, does he not like IPAs?
Oh, my God. You know what? That's a good enough segue as any. One of my honorable mentions, only because of this conversation, was where the fuck is my notes on it? There it is. Morning Combat episode 12. Him and his co-host argue. Yeah, it's Brian. His name's Brian. They're both so bad at drinking. I've never been so mad about a beer conversation in my fucking life. So Brian brings up IPAs. Luke says, of course you like IPAs, you donk, and chastises him for liking terrible beer. Brian then says, what, you probably like terrible beer like Belgian beer? Which, now I'm mad at everybody. Yeah, exactly. And yeah. Luke loses his fucking mind. He's like, are you fucking kidding me? Belgian beers, are you fucking kidding me? And then at a certain point, Brian brings up like, oh, well, I've had like okay Belgian beers that are like middle of the road, that are like high end, like Delirium. And Luke loses his mind more. He's like, Delirium is not high-end Belgian beer. Have you tried Actually, I believe he called it Trappiste beer.
Oh, my fucking God. I'm about to have aneurysm.
Well, and then so Brian is bringing up incredible IPAs like Treehouse Brewing's Julius and Purple Haze. Like Treehouse Brewing makes incredible hazies in the New England area, and then Luke's just shitting on IPAs. And he makes fun of Dogfish Head 120 minute, which I mean to me, they both have okay points, but then they immediately say something absolutely ridiculous. So. It was just crazy as fuck.
Dude, there's been so many people at my job that have like, I don't like IPAs because it's bitter. I'm like, motherfucker, you got to evolve your palate. And then basically I just start them low, and eventually maybe like 2 weeks later, oh, wow, I love IPAs now. No shit.
Well,
but, however, is it possible to just not like it at all? Sure. I mean, that's your...
If you really don't like bitter stuff, then you're not going to like IPAs.
Yeah, no, then I'm not going to convince you. Like, I finally convinced my brother to like dessert stouts, like sweet stouts. So, because he's just like, oh, I like it if it's chocolate. You know, I just don't. I get that, you know, but
and a lot of that stuff. Yeah, and a lot of that stuff's flavor wise, but just broad, like, oh, IPAs are trash beers. You're like, man, you probably haven't had an IPA in way over a decade. If you think they're all just bitter bombs. So, like, just super sweet, super bitter, super strong. So, because they are all fruity and floral and delicious nowadays.
That reminds me. Speaking of fruity, I probably tasted one of my favorite sours I've ever had. It's called, I think there's a number in front of it, but it's the raspberry sour from Kilowatt. Holy fuck, is that good?
Oh, yeah. I've had that last time I was over.
So good. All of there's like no vinegary acidity, lingering mouthfeel. It's just smooth as fuck, and it's crazy. It's like just a golden color too. It's not even like you figured you'd have more like that splash of fruity color.
Yeah, well, a lot of their stuff is kettle brew or is kettle sour.
Oh, it is a kettle sour. No wonder. Okay.
Yeah. It's and it makes sense because they're easier to turn around and they're a lot cheaper, and you have way less of a chance of fucking up your entire brewing system with.
I'm glad you mentioned that because everyone at my work says, "How do you guys don't do sours?" And I'm like, well, because the risk of cross-contamination of bacteria, yeast, it's extremely high. I'm like, the only way we could do it is if you do a kettle sour. And they're like, what's that? And I'm like, fuck.
Yeah. You're like, no one has time to try to break this down.
We just don't have time for this. You know, like, we're not doing sours. The only way we'll ever do a sour if it's kettle, and then that's a pain in the ass. So, no.
Yeah. Yeah, they actually Kilowatt has I think they rotate that kettle sour pretty regularly because I've had a couple different kinds. They had one, I wish I could remember what it was. It was that pineapple cherry or something like that? It was like some kind of tropical combination that you would find either in like those big stick popsicles or bomb pop or something like that. It was like one of those combos of flavors that's just like super fruity, barely tart, just like nice and bright. I really like Kilowatt. Their fucking chocolate macadamia nut stout.
Oh, dude. Amazing. Oh, and their Doppelbock that they have.
Yeah, they have a very good Doppelbock.
Real good.
Yeah, I love some of their beers. They have a coconut. What did I have?
It's a coconut porter that they have.
Yeah, and I think I want to say he mixed it with an IPA when I was there.
No, they have that too.
The dude basically was like, try them together, and it's fucking incredible.
Yeah, I was just there on just Wednesday, so a couple days ago.
Yeah. Oh god, can you tell I miss beer a lot?
Yeah.
Back to my.
I'll just tease you. Hey man, come to my work. Just kidding.
Back to my fucking boring ass coffee.
Yeah.
So some other also rans. Actually, did you have any also rans you wanted to shout out or honorable mentions?
Mixed martial analyst was good. Severe MMA was solid. Care Don't Care was kind of just how it is. John Nash wants to shoot his shot at Holly Holm now that she's single, evidently, which is funny.
Sure, John Nash, yeah. Checks out.
Those are the mentions I have.
Nice. Let's see, I had a couple. I'll start with our intro, actually. Ironically enough. Actually, is the name of the intro that we did. It is, of course, Fernanda Praches's. I'm fucking up her name so bad. Whatever. I'm saying the Ben Folks pronunciation of her name.
Just be extra white and say Prates.
Yeah. Oh God. But Fernanda Praches did a listener Q&A, and as you heard on the intro, she actually answered one of our questions. She actually repeated "The Sound of Violence," an MMA podcast about MMA podcasts. How meta. And I was like, oh, that's That's a dope pronunciation of the word meta.
Meta.
Yeah.
I'm a meta human.
I liked that a lot. It was fucking great. But of course, I asked her about podcasts and booze, and she was like, "Oh, it's a weird segue." It's like, well, not if you listen to this show, it sure isn't. But yeah, it's a really good episode. If people ask her if you could give an MMA journalist $10 million to start a promotion, who would turn a profit fastest? Let's see. She answered my question about podcasts and booze and named off like 20 podcasts that I've only heard of like half of. Of course, Last House on the Left was one of them, because if you're at all a girl or at all into like murder mystery stuff, of course you listen to Last House on the Left. I only say that because literally I live with people who go to Last House on the Left meetups and shit. So let's see. She also gives tips on how to learn English, which I believe just consisted of watching a lot of Baywatch.
Okay.
Yeah, real solid. She answers the question, when will the MMA community look for complexity and nuance in fight narratives instead of just shitty trash talk? She talks about some cool conspiracy theories. And she talks about how well-spoken Paulo Costa is in Portuguese. Which, that's one of the cool things about her show is, since, first off, it's incredible how good her English is, considering she does that whole show in a language that's not her own. It's fucking insane. As you guys heard on impressive. As you guys heard on our Mexico City intro, my Spanish, it lasts about 2 minutes until I have to just do super broken English. But yeah, just a good episode overall. I really like her show, so big shouts out to that. Well, actually, on The Athletic. Fight Court with Rob and King Mo is actually going to be our clip here coming up on the break. Talk a lot about Spence vs. Porter, talk about the fights from last weekend, and they each pick 5 athletes they'd like to see cross over to MMA, which was kind of cool. Especially with King Mo and Rob both having their feet kind of heavily in the both wrestling scene and in the more traditional like kickboxing kind of scene. So that was pretty dope. Writer and the Fighter, episode 47. If you guys want tips on how to make a strawberry pie, or you want to hear how The Princess Bride is overrated, this is the show for you. It's a lot of food talk. It's a really good one, though. MMA Vivisection for UFC 243 and Bellator 228 was very solid. Both those episodes were really good. Weekly Scraps, episode 42. Aljo, this is Aljamain Sterling's podcast. He talks about rehabbing after surgery and his new Tesla. And he also breaks down OSP's Von Flu and mentions that Al has been working his wrestling a lot and kind of getting back to that kind of game plan in the lead up to this Hooker fight, which I think will make this really interesting. So that was cool to hear. Severe MMA, episode 229, part 1 and part 2. Shawnee Podcasts and Graham talk about UFC Dublin in the first one. Kind of do a big recap of that since they were in the building for it. And for the second, or for part 2, Shawnee Podcasts, aka the Pod God, which I still I don't know, I still have problems with Sean calling himself the Pod God when I literally know people who've had a show named Pod Gods for like a decade. But to be fair, it still cracks me up every time, so I'm not mad at it. Let's see. Oh yeah, so Sean's joined by Andy Stevenson to recap Bellator 228 and UFC Copenhagen. They also talk a bit about UFC 243. Coast to Coast Combat Hour, the one after Bellator 228 was solid. Matt talks about being in the building for Bellator 228. And I mentioned the morning combat, so those are the ones I had for this week. Cool. Did you have any well-rounded podcasts in honor of Co-Main Event podcast? Do you have any well-rounded stuff that people should check out?
Yeah, definitely check out Joe Rogan Experience with the Black Keys.
Oh,
what
really?
A fantastic, really fucking good. My exposure to Black Keys, besides being a huge fan of their music for the past maybe like 10 years, or I guess a little before that too, maybe 50, but was just Dan Auerbach, because he kind of mostly gets a spotlight. He's the lead vocalist and guitar player for the Black Keys.
He's the one with the giant fro that's ethnically ambiguous. Oh no, wait, that's Counting Crows.
No, yeah. But Dan Auerbach's been on Jerry before, like years ago. Mm-hmm. I like this one specifically because the drummer Patrick Carney was the one doing all the talking, and that dude is fucking hilarious. That dude's like naturally a comedian. Yeah,
funny.
just the stories and how many times he had Joe laughing, and just some of the comments are like, "Hey Joe, you found someone who's better than Brendan Shaw, but that's not too difficult." It's like, oh
Shots
god.
fired. In
Um,
my head, I always mix up the Counting Crows and the Black Keys. I don't know why. Maybe just because I heard
Maybe
about
just
them
because
around the same time. Or
crows are black. I don't know.
maybe. I don't know. But in my head,
Um,
someone says the Black Keys, I think of the dude from the Counting Crows.
yeah.
So,
Either way, I'm not trying to convince people to be a fan of the Black Keys. I mean, I think they have solid music, good alternative blues vibes to grassroots kind of shit. You know, they're from Ohio, but more of like a, I don't know what kind of, there's like famous. My brain's dead right now, but either way, made me more of a fan of the band just hearing. And the whole time Dan Auerbach is just smoking a spliff. Either that or, and actually no, I think it was actually just a pre-roll. But either way, he was in a good mood, and it was funny episode, really good.
nice.
It's like 3 hours long too, so you could tell
Oh.
Joe really liked talking to them.
You know what? It might have been in one of the Mike Tyson joints or blunts that have been laying around.
I think that's what it was.
Because Ari
Yeah, because I
almost-
was like pausing it, and they kind of like looking like, what the fuck's he holding? I was
Yeah.
like, oh, okay, he's definitely smoking.
Yeah, because Ari almost lit one up on the Sober October lead-in podcast, I believe, because he mixed.
Oh, that would have been a fun way to end that quickly.
Dude, that should. Well, I'll talk about it in a minute. But do you have any other honorable or well-rounded episodes?
Not that I could think of, but off topic, I don't know if it's because I've been watching all these UFC countdown stuff, but now I'm getting like ads on Instagram for like Marvel comics and buying shit online. It's pretty funny. Maybe because it's at Marvel Stadium. I don't know.
That's part of
But-
it, plus all the Izzy crossover with Marvel stuff.
Oh yeah, because he loves Deadpool and then like some other stuff.
Yeah, he's got a bunch of Marvel tattoos, and just comic and anime tattoos in general.
That's right.
Let's
He's a
see.
weeb.
Yeah, exactly. So of course I have to shout out Joe Rogan Experience 1357, which is the one with Ari, where they smoke cigars in the lead-in to Joe Rogan Experience 1358, which is Sober October 3, where they go in depth on talking about Sober October. Hilarious that Joe and Ari, the episode before the Sober October episode, which they recorded back to back, they smoke a cigar to start that off, and they immediately joke that like, oh well, Sober October's over because they're smoking a cigar, which, by the way, cigars do not count for Sober October, which is good because I've already smoked about more than that, probably 6 since the first, because I'm so bored. But yeah, it's a fun episode. They talk about crazy shit. Talk about how Ari, evidently, the most recent Burt cast that Ari and Burt recorded together, Ari drugged Burt with Molly. Like, he slipped it in a shot that he gave him and didn't tell him.
Wait, when was this?
Like a week ago.
That's a terrible thing to do. I wouldn't even do that to my best friend. What the
I know.
fuck?
And Ari had zero regret. He just kept laughing about it.
What an idiot.
He's also
Whatever.
banned from Bert's house by his wife, evidently. So that was hilarious, but fucked up. Yeah, a lot of it revolved around that and them trying to figure out what they're going to do for Sober October. So I think what they came down to is they're going to take 10 classes on just any kind of classes, and then they're going to try and read 500 pages. So I'm probably not doing classes, but I am going to read. I actually got The Corner, which is the David Simon book that's like kind of the lead in to the episodic show he did prior to The Wire. It's kind of like all
That's
based
right.
on that. And then towards the end of Sober October, I'm definitely reading Charles Bukowski's Hollywood, which if you look, this is a very used book. I think there's bloodstains on it, which is like a very Charles Bukowski kind of thing. So I don't know where I got that thing, but I'm excited about that. And then, Leanne Kreischer, Bert's wife, and Christina Pajitsky, Tom's wife, are doing a
Yep.
show together called So Over October.
That sounds hilarious.
Yeah, where they just complain about how fucking Sober October is awful to
Yeah.
deal with.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, so episode 1 of that just came out, I think today, and I'm excited to check that out. I've only caught the first couple minutes, but seems like it's going to be fucking hilarious. And then the only other one I had is The Lapsed Fan. That's the pro wrestling podcast hosted by Jack Encarnacio and JP Sorrow. It's all focused on, well, outside of their Patreon, it's all focused on old wrestling events. So like they've done a deep dive on all of the old all the old WrestleManias, all the old StarCasts, all the old AWA shows, and then they just went into the lamentable tragedy of World Class Wrestling, which was an old Texas organization, and it is the most fucked up story you'll ever goddamn hear. It's just, oh my god, so many deaths, so much crazy shit going on. Everybody's arrested for drugs, people are losing limbs.
Wait, what the fuck is this you're talking about?
This is the Lapsed Fans series, The Lamentable Tragedy of World Class. So World Class Wrestling is an organization from the late 70s, early 80s in Texas. It's all ran by the NWA, which is like, I'm not going to get into it. It's a long story, but essentially there's this guy named Fritz von Erich, who he had a bunch of sons, and he was originally a wrestler, and he got all of his sons into wrestling. And it's just the most depressing shit of all time. Just horrible tragedy after horrible tragedy in a row happening to these people over and over and over again. And but of course, since it's the Lapsed Fan, their breakdown of it all is fucking hilarious. Full disclosure, these episodes, I believe they did, I think, one episode for each year, or I think they did a part 1 and a part 2 for each year. And I think they did 5 years, something like that. But each of those parts are about 4 or 5 hours long. So like altogether, this series is probably like 20 to 30 hours. It's really, really long. There's a ton of info, but just holy shit, some of the stories. I don't want to give it away. Let's just say the majority of this dude's 5 kids who all got into wrestling, let's just say there was not a lot of people left at the end of that story.
That's a shame.
It's just the craziest shit you'll ever hear. So I can't recommend that enough. I don't even like pro wrestling. I think it's all fucking stupid. But The Lapsed Fan, #1, just breaks shit down incredible. They're very fucking funny. MMA fans would know Jack Encarnacion from the Sherdog Radio Network. He used to host a lot of the roundtables and stuff like that. But man, just a super tragic story, but so well told, so I can't recommend that any higher. It's just so fucking cool. So highly recommend checking that out, and that's all I got.
Yeah, that's all I got as well, man.
Cool. Well, I am going to go turn the air conditioning on for a couple minutes because it is hot as balls in here. But we are going to quickly play a clip of Rob Tatum on Fight Court with Rob Tatum and King Mo. Rob talks about some of Rich Chow's questionable matchmaking. So listen to that clip, and then we're going to end this stream. We're going to start a new stream directly after that, and we're going to break down this weekend's UFC 243 card, as well as we'll talk very briefly about the Bellator 229 main card, a couple of those fights, which this next clip might have something to do with. So we'll be right back.
Liked by the sound of violence.
This fight means absolutely nothing other than they gave Michael Page a gimme fight. And I've never been a fan of that. I mean, you can go back all the way to the days of Rich Chow with Strikeforce, where he would set up some of the cards like this, where you could look at the card and be like, yep, everyone in the red corner is going to win tonight, because that's the type of card he put together.
About it all.
touched by the sound of violence.
This comes from The Sound of Violence, a podcast about MMA podcasts that is getting so meta, right? I'm blown away by this. But he asks, what are some of your favorite podcasts? Also, what Brazilian booze or drinking customs are us Americans sleeping on? I like the segue there. Like very, very natural transition there from podcast to Brazilian booze. But let's start with my area of expertise, which is, of course, booze.